A smart man knows what to say. A wise man knows whether or not to say it. So, I could very clearly and simply explain to you what is going on with Jon Jones and his career. I could do that. I'm smart enough to know it, but I don't do it because I'm wise enough not to say it. Now, we're going to put the shoe back on you. I'm going to speak to you in code. You're going to hear what I say, but if you're going to learn what I'm trying to tell you, then you're going to have to observe what I don't say. I don't know if this will be a fun exercise for you or not. Professional wrestling. WWF. Now you know it as the WWE specifically. Is the model that the UFC mirrored itself after. That's not a secret. That was told to us very directly, specifically by Lorenzo Fertitta. You may not know what to do with that because you may not have studied the model and the history of the WWE. You may just be a fan that tunes in and you want to be entertained right there in that moment. I fully understand that. I personally find an interest on the business side of it. Not just what happened, why did this happen, and how did it turn out to be either a flop, a massive attraction, or somewhere in between. That interests me. How much did the UFC mimic itself and mirror the practices of the WWE? That was never established. That was never made clear. Now, that's where you have to look a little bit closer. If I was to break down to you move for move and idea for idea that was done, I mean, the mirroring was almost exact. To the point, if you wanted to predict what's going to be next for our industry, you could just go and observe at what step are we in the mirroring of the WWE and what was the WWE's next step. It would then lead you logically to guess what our industry's next step is going to be. In the WWE, you've got this show, right? They come to your town. You see a show. You got a ring set up. You got referees, you got valets, you got announcers, you got the athletes themselves, you got the managers. In your mind, there was probably a crew of grips that came in and set that arena. And when the stars get done performing, off they go to a limousine that gets to a jet to get them to the next town. That's probably within your mind. And the crew of grips runs in, and they tear the cage down, they load the truck up, and they meet the stars in the next town. That's probably how that goes. Those stars that you're speaking about, the wrestlers, the valets, the announcers, the referees, all of those human beings that make up the crew are the ones that set up the arena. The wrestlers who are the main event of this show, an event that you just came out to that was a huge attraction, will go in the back, they'll shower, they'll put on their street clothes, they will then come back with WD-40 and a crescent wrench, and they will take that ring apart. They will load it amazingly organized into boxes, as they will then do with the visual components, the cameras and whatnot. They will do that with the lights, they will do it with the sound and audio. They will put that into boxes, they will take those into the truck, and they will load it themselves. Does that surprise you? And if you were to go back before there were the limousines and there were the private jets, you could see as you're going town to town where this is the crew, this is the labor. You set it up. You're a professional wrestler, but tonight you don't have a match. You're the referee. When we get to another town, you hand that shirt to somebody else and you get to go in there and a different professional wrestler comes in and beats the referee. It is extremely well organized, but it is also known as paying your dues. And if you find a way around that, if you're good looking enough, if you're skilled enough, if you're connected enough that you're a second generation guy and you don't tear that cage down and you don't load those boxes and you don't help to put it on the truck, you're going to be viewed differently by the boys. And when the politics come into it, and who's going to get the push and who gets to be at the end of the night and who gets to be champion today, if you didn't pay the same dues and make the same towns, and tear down and set up just as many arenas and cages, it's going to be a bit of a problem. And like any organization, you're not looking for problems. You're looking to go smooth. You're looking to show guys the way this is done. Here's the right thing to do. Here's what leadership and hard work and dedication does, and you rise them up. There are exceptions over time, but those exceptions have not gone down very well. What I just described for you is not the path that the Ultimate Warrior had by example. What I just described to you is not the path that Bill Goldberg had by example. An Ultimate Warrior, rest his soul, but he was not welcomed back at events. He wasn't sitting in the front row of a Mania. He wasn't coming in the back and slapping hands with the boys. He was ostracized from the community. You don't see Bill Goldberg going to events and being one of the boys in the audience. You will see him brought in for very special events. Bill got a very special deal that any of us would have taken had we been able to get it. But there's still a way, and our locker rooms aren't as discussed as their locker rooms, but it works the same way. And if somebody can come in without paying their dues, and all of a sudden have one of the main card slots, there is a demotivation that is sent through the locker rooms, which is something an organization would prefer to avoid. Jon Jones was the champion. He walked away. And there's no plans for Jon Jones. Jon cannot hurt anybody right now. The marketing team doesn't realize, oh my God, I just spent and worked overtime for 8 months straight building a guy who's not going to come. That's not the case. The editing department doesn't realize I worked nights and weekends to build a guy who took it from me. The PR team wasn't going around doing the tours and the radio stations to have a guy put the brakes on. They did. That did happen, but it can't happen now. There's no momentum. There's no wind at the sails. Do we want to restart that? Do we want to put ourselves in a position where somebody who's already hurt us once can do it again? And moreover, what message do we send to the locker room? What message do we send to other champions if we acquiesced? Those are questions that are going to be asked. So Jon returns. Jon's ready to fight. Jon's great. He's awesome. People keep talking about that. I mean, as though that's a thing. Guys will want more money saying, I'm the champion of Abu Dhabi, by example. I've won 15 fights. I had 9 finishes all in the first round. Like, they will come and they will try to read you resumes as though that's their worth, and they believe it. We'll have people write about it that want to come in and talk about pay structures because this is what the organization made, and therefore somebody else who's part of the system should be given X amount. Could you imagine? Could you imagine when those arguments come out about the UFC and fighter pay? That fighter pay is in relation to how much the organization has brought in or moreover has profited. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine how badly Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos of the world and the Warren Buffett are sweating bullets thinking, oh dear Christ, don't let that be the way. The market sets price. There are economic factors at place that set price, and what the organization brought in has never been part of that. But those dialogues are out there, and right now, Jon's not in a spot that he could hurt anybody. I realize I'm not handing you the answers. I'm getting close, and if you're smart enough to read between it, you will see there is a very possible chance that Jon never fights again. And Jon could dispute that and say, no, I'm ready to go. Well, are you licensed anywhere, Jon? Well, no, I haven't done that, but I'll get that after. Okay. Let me just stop you right there. If you aren't licensed, then you're not going to fight. Do you have an opponent? Do you have, right? We can start to ask some of these questions. Now, you can get around what happened. You can get around and start over from scratch and say, it's new me, and I'm going to give you 4 fights. I'm going to give you 4. I'm going to do them any way you want. After that 4, I'm going to go back to fighting. I'm going to go back to negotiating. You would have that right to do that based on your contract. As a matter of fact, it would even be expected of you. But if you have a 4-fight deal and you've got a history of wanting to come in after fight number 2, turn the gun back on the organization, you've got a problem. Now, how do you get around that? Well, if Francis Ngannou can come to the table and your Jon Jones can be used as a bargaining chip to get what you really want, which is Francis back in the octagon, I don't know that that is the case. If it were, then there will be a seat at the table and everybody's going to have to deal with the headaches that come along with it. But if you don't get Francis back, what do you do with Jon? And I know every one of you's hands went up and you're already yelling at me and you're telling me it's Stipe Miocic. I understand that, but you got to understand back, you've never made a dollar in MMA. I don't say it to be a jerk to you. But you continue to think that you have the answers and you know the right answers, but you haven't made a dollar in MMA. So before you put Jon versus Stipe, what would be the problem with putting Jon against Stipe? Nothing? Gonna be big news, gonna be a great fight. Be interesting contest. Could be for an interim championship, could be for an undisputed championship, but what else is going to come from that? Because there are many promoters that play checkers, and they will go in all in for one night. You have other promoters that play chess, and every move has to set up another move. So if you do Jon Jones versus Stipe, what do you do next? You might have an answer. You bring Ciryl Gane in there. That's a very interesting matchup. That's true, but then you're armed with the fact that Ciryl was given a world title fight with the greatest storyline in history, and he did nothing. But let's just say we're going to do it that way. We're going to go Stipe and Jones, and then we're going to draw into Ciryl. That's actually going to be a pretty good round robin. That's going to be a pretty interesting match, and that's going to take us until April. What do you do then? And there's where the problem comes. There's 5 and 6 and 7 very compelling matches for Jon Jones at light heavyweight now. Now that he left and that division got to reform itself, got to bring up new and rising stars. There's a number of things you could do, but apparently he's not looking to go back to 205. He's at heavyweight. Where are you going to put him? Who are you going to put him with? And why would you be in a hurry to do that if you've only got 2 or 3 moves to do anyway? There's other people that are in this same position who are world champion who walked away. They were empowered and they were put in a position. They were trusted with that position. They were trusted to lead. They were trusted to promote. They were trusted to marquee. They were trusted to bring in attention to that division, which is what the championship opportunity was given. If we were to go back to the WWE, if there was ever a champion put in that position who refused to come out and refused to draw and refused to bring people and refused to bring attention to the rest of the boys that weren't in that position, they would take the belt off him immediately. And if he gets out his Crescent Wrench and his WD-40 and he can prove his way and he can pack up enough trucks and he can show that he's learned from his mistakes, he may be given that opportunity again. But he will grab those wrenches. He will be there on team. He will show that he's a team player. He will do those things, or he will not be given that opportunity again. And when it comes to, is Jon going to come back? Will Jon ever fight in the organization again? I would tend to lean towards yes. Are they going to be in a hurry for it? That obviously is a no. And if things don't get worked out with Francis, right, the whole talk of Jones versus Stipe, we're not even doing that anymore. We're too close to the finish line with Francis. If things get worked out with Francis, we can start to see where things are going to change for Jones. If things don't get worked out with Francis, and you think that you know the answer of what's next for Jon Jones, you didn't understand anything that you just listened to.